Welcome to Cloud Engineer Skills. In today's tutorial, we'll be going over automatically triggered tasks within Azure Container Registry. What you can do with automatically triggered tasks in Azure Container Registry is automatically trigger updates to your container images inside your registry through the use of three different types of triggers. The first trigger is when you get a source code update. The second trigger is when a base image is updated. And the third is on a particular schedule, which you can define using a cron expression. So in this tutorial, we'll create a Azure Container Registry. We've done this before in a previous tutorial, so I'll go over this pretty quickly. And then we'll try out the three different types of automated triggers to get a container image updated within your Azure Container Registry. Before we start, we will need a Microsoft Azure account and access to the command line interface for Azure as well. Let's get started with creating a Azure Container Registry first. I'll just log in to Azure using the command line interface. I'll create the resource group. Next, I'll create the container registry inside that resource group. Okay, so that's been created. I'll just go over into the resource groups in the Azure portal and I'll check that I've got this resource group created, and inside it there should be a container registry, which is there, and it should be blank with no repositories in it, which is correct. We'll look at the first type of automatically triggered task, which is via source code update. So you can use private or public Git repos in GitHub for this. You can't use GitHub Enterprise repos, that's currently not supported, or you can use a Azure DevOps repo. You use the command line interface to create these automatically triggered tasks via source code update, and you can do that using the ACR task create command. This command has flags that you can configure how you run those source code updates. So you can trigger the source code updates on commits, which is enabled by default when you do that task create. And if you want to disable that, you can set that flag, the commit trigger enabled flag, to false. And you can also trigger the source code update task via a pull request as well. And that's a pull request trigger enabled flag that you can set, that's default disabled. You can choose a branch that you want to apply it to within your Git repo as well. You just need to add a hash symbol with the branch name to the Git URL when you specify that in the ACR task create command. It uses a webhook created in the Azure Container Registry to manage those container image updates back to the Azure Container Registry. You need to create a personal access token in your Git repository to enable this. I'll be doing this within GitHub. If you go to github.com/settings/tokens/new, you'll be able to create your access token. So you can use the tokens classic, that's fine. I've already created a token, but basically the process you need to follow is create a new token classic. You can give it a name, you can give it an expiry time, and you need to enable public repo and repo status as the two permissions that it needs access to, two scopes it needs access to. Now this will actually, in the tokens classic section, or this personal access token will apply to all of your code repositories. So you can try using fine-grained permissions as a different approach if you want to limit it to specific repositories, but I won't bother with that for this tutorial. I've already created a repository that I'll be using for setting up the automated trigger tasks based on source code updates. I've got a simple Git repo. It's got a Docker file in it it's building a very simple Node.js application. It's using Node 20 Alpine, and it's copying over one file. Really, it's just an app.js file, and that's what's going to be run when the Docker images actually run. So the app.js is really simple. It's just a console log saying hello world. That's all it does. So this is the container image that I'm going to put into the container repository, and I'm also going to update it later with a commit, and I want that to trigger a update to the container image automatically within the Azure Container Registry. So that's what we'll be doing first. This is the command we need to use. So we need to use AZACR task create. We need to specify the registry. We need to specify the name of the task that we'll be creating. The image that we'll be creating, we'll give it a name. And the context, which is the repository, and we're using the master branch. So I've got to specify the hash symbol plus master. The file that will get the Docker file, what is the path of that Docker file within this repository? So it's just straight to the Docker file itself. And then you need to give the Git access token that you've previously generated in the previous step. Okay, so the task has been created. And if I use the ACR task list command and specify the registry, I should be able to see the list of tasks in my registry. I should see one task here. Okay, and if you check in the portal here, we should see under tasks, we've got a node hello world task that was just created and it hasn't been run yet. Like I showed you in the browser, there's been no runs of that task yet. So nothing's there right now. Why don't we run this task for the first time using the AZACR task run command, specifying the registry and specifying the name of the task. Now remember, we created the task with the name node hello world task. So let's run this task manually for once. So we haven't gotten to the automated part yet. So this is just running the task manually just to test it works. So you can see it is grabbing that image. And it's pushing that image. And it looks like that is being successful. And if we want to list the runs for the tasks, we can use this command again. AZACR task list -runs. And now we can see the task has been run once and it's been triggered manually. And it took 17 seconds. We can check that their repository is there and we've got our image in there. So when we ran that task, the manual task just then, it did go and grab that image and build it. So I went to grab the Docker file and it got the source code and it ran the build and then pushed the image using the latest tag. So that is, the image is in here at the moment. Next, we want to test out that we can make a commit and it will automatically update itself. What we'll do now is we'll go into the repository and we'll make a change with a commit. So what I'll say is, hello world, let's update the container image. So I'm going to commit this and then push it to the repository. So I'm now going to push that into the GitHub public repository. In the tasks section, if we have a look in the run section, we should see a task running, which is triggered based on this git commit. So you can see here the trigger here is commit, the status is currently running, and the run ID is CA2. So it'll take a few seconds to run, and you can see here that it's succeeded. You can get the same information using the Azure CLI. So if I list the runs like I just did before, you can see that manual one we ran before, and we can see the commit that was automated through the GitHub commit that was made. Can also get those logs if we wanted to look at those logs. We did see them in the Azure portal, but we can see it here as well. So you just got to specify the run ID using the AZACR task logs command and also specify the registry. And you can get those same logs that were visible within the Azure portal. So that's the first way for setting up an automated trigger task for ACR. We'll move to the second way now, which is using a base image update. Okay, for the base image update automatically triggered task, what I've done is I've created two Docker files, one called Dockerfile base and another called Dockerfile base update. Now, we've also got an application that also has a Docker file in it, and this application is going to make use of this base image. It's going to pull it not from Docker Hub, instead it's going to pull it from our container registry, where we'll push this container image there based on the node 20 Alpine image that we'll initially get from Docker Hub, then we'll move that into our container registry. The application itself is just like we had before. It's just printing hello world to the console. It's a Node.js application. That's all it is. You can see here the from command, we're getting the image from our Azure Container Registry. That's the important part of this. Initially, we're going to make our base image based on this Docker file, so Dockerfile -base. So let's create that now. We can see we've got two files, Dockerfile base and Dockerfile base update. So we'll use the Dockerfile base first, which is just grabbing the node 20 Alpine image from Docker Hub and building that as a container for us to place inside our container registry. So let's run that now. An ACR build command specifying the registry and specifying the image and the Docker file as well. Okay, so if we check within our repositories in our ACR instance, you can see we've got this new repository here called base images node, and we've got one tagged for 20 Alpine. So next we'll create the task, and this task is for the application itself. So it's not for the base image, it's for the node application that will utilize the base task. So similar to what we did before, I've also added the application code for this repository for the application itself. That is in a GitHub repo as well. And I'm using the same personal access token to access that public repo. So that's how it's pulling the application code. That's how it's getting application code. It's grabbing it from the GitHub repo. Run that command now to create that task. Okay, so next I'll just check in the Azure portal. If we go back to tasks, I should see one more task that's been created, which is called Node Hello World, and it uses the base task. So what we'll do next is we'll manually trigger the task that we've just created to build the application image. So if we just run that now, this is required because it doesn't know that there's a dependency on the base image yet until we've run the task at least once. So we should run it now with the ACR task run command specifying the registry and the name of the task that we just created. So let's do that. Command, you can see it is pulling the base image from our container registry. So you can see it's pulling it from base images /node from our container registry. Okay, so that was done successfully. We can just look in the portal again and look in runs. We should see an entry there for the manual trigger. Okay, so now we're going to update the base image. Now, how are we going to update the base image? So this is a bit of a hack way to update it. So I'm just simulating an update here. I'm basically getting the image to be updated through adding a new layer to the image. And to add a new layer, all I've done is just specify an environment variable, and I've just called it simulate base image update and I set it to true. It doesn't matter what it's called, but this is how I'm triggering an update to the base image. So we need to use this Dockerfile base update Dockerfile instead of the Dockerfile base Dockerfile. So to update the container image, so we'll do that for the base image now. So this is the command ACR build, and we're specifying the registry and we're specifying the image name, which we've defined before. And we're using a different Docker file this time, so we're using Dockerfile base update. Because that base image is updated, it should trigger the other task to run as well, because it sees that it's using that base image and that base image has updated, so it should automatically run an update to the application container image. Now, if we have a look in runs and refresh, you can see the manual task we just did, and we can see the image task is completed as well. The automatically triggered image update task has been run as well. And if we check in repositories, we should see that both this repository, base images /node, and node hello world uses base, both of these should have been updated as of 1 minute ago. So you can see that was just updated just 1 minute ago for the base image, and we can see as well, just 1 minute ago, the application image got updated as well as a result of the dependent base image being updated. So that's triggering updates automatically based on a base image update. And let's now go to the final type of automatically triggered task within ACR, which is scheduled automatically triggered tasks. Azure Container Registry allows you to automatically trigger tasks using a schedule, which you can define using a cron expression. So it will update your container images within your registry based on a schedule defined using a cron expression. And if you want to get a quick view on how to make cron expressions, you can use crontab.cronhub.io, and you can get a syntax for cron jobs. So if you want to run something every minute, you specify ** with a space in between. If you want to run it every 5 minutes, it's */5 and 4 more stars. First, we will create a new task. We'll go ACR task create, and I'll just grab the GitHub Git access token now. So let's create this new task now. So it's ACR task create, specify the registry, specify the name of the task, specify the image, specify the context, which we're using a source context. So the github.git link, and we're using the master branch. We're specifying the Docker file within this code repository. We're giving it a Git access token and a schedule we want to run this task. We want to run this task every minute. Let's show this specific task that we just created and get the details about that task using the ACR task show command. Okay, so you can see it is classified as a base image, source, and a timer task. It is all three, and it's currently enabled. Let's have a look at all the timers that we've specified, timer tasks, using ACR task timer list with a name of the task and the registry as parameters. We can see we've got one timer task, name of T1, and its schedule there, and its status is enabled. Why don't we add another task? We'll call it node hello world timer task 2. And we'll do that using the ACR task timer add. We'll specify a name. It will be that same timer task. And so we're adding a new timer name essentially of node hello world timer task 2. And this will run every 15 minutes. So let's list those timers. I should see 2 entries now. You can see T1, and we can see node hello world timer task 2. These are both enabled. They've got different schedules. One's running every 15 minutes, one's running every minute. Say we don't want to run this every 15 minutes. We want to change the frequency. Let's run it every 5 minutes instead. ACR task timer update. We'll specify the name of the task. we'll specify the registry, and we'll specify the timer name. Now we've got two timer names here. We've got T1 and node hello world timer task 2. Let's update the gnome hello world timer task 2. We'll change that from every 15 minutes to every 5 minutes. Okay, so that's been updated. Let's list those timer tasks. We should see 2 entries, and one is running every 5 minutes now, and one is running every minute, same as we had it before. Now let's have a look at the task runs using the ACR task list runs, specifying the registry. Enough time has passed that we should see a timer task. At least one has run, and we can see 3 have run so far. Okay, and we can see that in the Azure portal as well. If we go into tasks and runs, we should see those tasks there. And if we want to get rid of one of those, let's get rid of the one that runs every minute. The timer name for that is T1. So we'll remove that timer task using ACR task timer remove. We'll specify the name of the timer task, the registry, and which timer we want to remove the timer name, which is T1. If we list these again, we should just see one timer task with the name node hello world timer task 2. The other one has been deleted. Okay, so we can see it is running right now. And if we list those runs again, we should see that is completed, yep, and it's succeeded. So that's the final ACR automatically triggered task, which is based on a schedule. Don't forget when you're finished to clean up all your resources with an AZ group delete and specifying the resource group, and you'll clean up all those resources that you created in this tutorial. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.